The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with the light of 1,000 stars. Its crystal dome stretched high above, showing the vast expanse of space. Around the circular table sat the most brilliant minds from across the galaxy, tall, short, scaled, and luminous beings from 100 different worlds. Today, none of them smiled. Dr. James Miller sat quietly in his chair, watching as the alien representatives argued. As Earth's lead scientist, he looked ordinary compared to the others. His simple black suit and graying hair made him almost invisible among the colorful and exotic beings. At the center of the table, a hologram showed a growing purple mass. The quantum anomaly, as they called it, was eating away at the edges of 3 star systems. Already, 2 planets had vanished into its depths. "The mathematics are clear," boomed the Builder representative, its crystalline body glowing with each word. The Builders were the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy. The anomaly's expansion cannot be stopped. The equations prove it. Miller watched as the Builder drew complex symbols in the air, each one glowing with pale blue light. The other representatives nodded in agreement, their faces showing defeat. "We must evacuate the threatened systems," said another alien, this one looking like a living cloud of silver mist. "It is the only logical choice." Miller cleared his throat. The small sound somehow cut through all the noise. Heads turned, and dozens of eyes, some glowing, some compound, some merely curious, focused on him. The human wishes to speak. The Builder's tone carried a hint of amusement. After all, humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were newcomers, considered primitive by most standards. "I would like to request 30 days, Miller said, his voice steady and calm. "Give Earth 30 days to study the problem." A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. Even the Builder's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. "Dr. Miller," the Builder said, its voice dripping with fake kindness, "we have studied this anomaly for 6 months. Our greatest minds have proven it cannot be stopped. What could humans possibly do in 30 days? Miller stood up slowly. His movement was so deliberate that the laughter died down. He walked to the hologram and studied the purple mass for a moment. "We humans," he said, "have a long history of doing impossible things." He turned to face the council. "When they said flying was impossible, we built planes. When they said reaching space was impossible, we went to the moon. When they said faster than light travel was impossible, we found a way." "This is different," the cloud-like alien interrupted. "This is beyond mere engineering. The mathematics might be wrong," Miller finished, "or incomplete. Or maybe we're looking at the problem from the wrong angle." He placed his hand through the hologram, watching the purple light play across his fingers. 30 days. That's all I ask." The Builder rose to its full height, towering over Miller. "You realize the political consequences if you fail. Earth's standing in the Council would suffer. Your reputation means nothing compared to the lives we could save," Miller cut in. His words rang through the chamber, and for the first time, some of the aliens looked at him with something other than amusement. The Builder was quiet for a long moment. Then it raised its crystalline arms. "The Council will vote. Those in favor of giving Earth 30 days to attempt the impossible." Slowly, hands, tentacles, and various appendages rose into the air. Not many, but enough. The Builder's glow dimmed slightly. 30 days, Dr. Miller. Not 1 day more." Miller nodded and gathered his papers. As he walked toward the exit, he pulled out his communication device. He had calls to make and a team to assemble. The aliens thought they had given him an impossible task, but they didn't understand something fundamental about humans. The word impossible just made them try harder. Dr. Miller stood in his office at Earth's Space Command Center, looking at 3 pictures on his screen. These were the people who might just save several star systems if they didn't kill each other first. "Sir," his assistant called through the intercom, "they're all here." "Send them in," Miller said, straightening his tie. The door slid open, and 3 very different people walked in. Tom Reed came first, his wild gray hair sticking up in all directions. He wore a t-shirt with Einstein's face on it, and there was a coffee stain on his sleeve. Behind him walked Anna White, her neat lab coat contrasting sharply with Tom's messy appearance. Robert Gray entered last, carrying a toolbox that had seen better days. "Do you know why you're here?" Miller asked. "To solve an impossible problem," Anna said, crossing her arms. Again, there was a hint of bitterness in her voice. Last year, 3 alien universities had kicked her out for suggesting their quantum theories were flawed. Tom laughed, dropping into a chair without waiting for permission. "The quantum anomaly, right? The one the mighty builders can't solve." He pulled out a tablet and started scribbling equations with his finger. "Yes." Miller pressed a button, and the purple hologram of the anomaly appeared in the center of the room. "We have 30 days." Robert whistled, walking around the hologram. 30 days to solve something the most advanced species in the galaxy couldn't figure out in 6 months. He tapped the hologram with a wrench from his toolbox. "I like those odds." Miller watched them study the anomaly. These 3 were humanity's best hope, even if nobody else knew it yet. Tom Reed had solved mathematical problems that computers said were impossible. Anna White understood quantum mechanics better than most aliens. And Robert Gray. He built things that worked when every textbook said they shouldn't. "The builders say it can't be contained," Miller explained. "Their mathematics prove it's impossible." "Their mathematics," Anna snorted. "They're so busy being perfect, they never think to be wrong." Tom looked up from his tablet. "The builders are like old computers. They can only think in straight lines. But the universe," he waved his hand through the hologram, "the universe doesn't work in straight lines." "We've got a lab ready," Miller said. "Top floor. Every tool and piece of equipment you might need. The builders sent their data, and—" "Don't want it," Robert interrupted, still studying the hologram. "Their data will just tell us what they think is impossible. We need fresh eyes." Miller smiled. This was exactly why he'd chosen them. "You'll have complete freedom to try whatever you think might work. But remember, we've got the whole planet's reputation riding on this." "Reputation?" Anna laughed. "There are 3 star systems about to be eaten by that thing. Forget reputation. We got lives to save." Tom stood up suddenly, his eyes bright. "I need a piano," he announced. "A piano." Miller blinked. "Yes, and about 50 meters of copper wire, 3 quantum processors," and he looked at Robert. "Can you build me something that can translate music into quantum frequencies?" Robert grinned. "Give me 6 hours and some coffee. I'll need access to consciousness monitoring equipment." Anna added, "The kind they use in deep meditation studies." Miller looked at his team. The messy mathematician, the rejected quantum physicist, and the engineer who broke rules for fun. They weren't what anyone would expect. They weren't what the aliens would respect. But maybe that was exactly what they needed. "Whatever you need," Miller said. "Just try not to blow up the building." "No promises," all 3 said at once, then laughed. As they left his office, already deep in excited discussion, Miller watched them go. The aliens thought humans were primitive, unadvanced, too young to understand the complex problems of the universe. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. 5 days had passed. The lab on the top floor of Earth's Space Command Center looked like a tornado had hit a music store and a physics lab at the same time. Papers covered with equations were taped to every wall. A grand piano sat in the center, surrounded by strange electronic equipment. Copper wires ran everywhere, connecting machines that blinked with colorful lights. Tom sat at the piano, playing a complex piece while staring at waves of data on a floating screen. Anna watched the quantum readings, shaking her head. "It's there," Tom said, hitting the same chord again. "Do you see it? The pattern?" "I see it," Anna replied. "But it doesn't make sense. The quantum fluctuations shouldn't respond to music like this." Robert walked in carrying 3 cups of coffee. His hands were black with machine oil. "But they are responding," he said, setting down the cups. "The question is why." Tom stopped playing, and the quantum readings settled back to normal. He took a long drink of coffee and pointed at a particularly complex equation on the wall. "The builder's math isn't wrong," he said. "It's just incomplete. They see the universe like a giant machine, but it's more like—" He played another chord, a song. Anna's eyes widened. She ran to one of the screens and started typing quickly. "That's it. They're treating the anomaly like a mechanical problem, but it's not. It's a harmony problem." Robert scratched his head with an oil-stained hand. "You lost me. Everything in the universe vibrates," Anna explained, pulling up more data. "Quantum strings, particles, energy. Everything has its own frequency. The builders tried to fight the anomaly's expansion with force, but what if we could match its frequency instead?" "Like tuning a guitar," Tom added, playing a series of notes. The quantum readings danced in response. Robert walked to his workbench. Picking up the strange device he built to translate music into quantum frequencies. "So we need to find the right song, the right frequency. Not just find it," Anna said, getting excited. "We need to create it. A perfect harmony that matches and cancels out the anomaly's destructive frequency." Just then, Dr. Miller walked in. He looked around at the chaos of musical instruments and scientific equipment with raised eyebrows. "Please tell me all this means you found something," he said. Tom spun around on the piano bench. The builders were thinking like machines, but the universe isn't a machine. It's a symphony. Miller blinked. "What?" "Look." Anna pulled up the hologram of the anomaly. "Every piece of matter and energy has its own frequency. The anomaly isn't just destroying things, it's disrupting their natural frequencies, their cosmic harmony. And you can stop this with music?" Miller asked skeptically. "Not just any music," Robert said, holding up his frequency translator. "We're going to create the perfect counter-frequency, a harmony so precise it will stabilize the quantum disruption." "But there's more," Tom added, his eyes shining with excitement. "We discovered something the builders never considered. Consciousness affects quantum states. When I play with intention, focusing on specific patterns, the quantum response is stronger." Miller looked at the data scrolling across the screens. He didn't understand half of it, but he could see the patterns matching Tom's music. "So what do you need?" he asked. "A bigger version of Robert's translator," Anna said. "Much bigger. And we'll need quantum processors, lots of them. And more pianos," Tom added. "Different instruments for different frequencies. And about 1,000 meters of copper wire," Robert finished. Miller looked at his team. Their theory sounded crazy. Fighting a quantum anomaly with music and consciousness. The builders would laugh if they knew. But the data was right there on the screens. The patterns couldn't be denied. "You'll have everything by tomorrow," Miller said. As he left the lab, he heard Tom start playing again. The quantum readings dancing to the music. The team had found something the builders had missed. The universe wasn't just math and mechanics. It was art. With only 3 days left, the entire galaxy was preparing for what they now called the Great Symphony. Every conscious species had agreed to participate, their minds and consciousness patterns ready to be linked through a network of builder communication devices and human frequency translators. In the control center on Earth, Tom sat at his piano, looking more tired than ever. Screens surrounded him, showing thousands of different consciousness patterns from across the galaxy. "Final system check," Robert called out. He stood before the massive wall of combined builder and human technology. "Primary frequency translator is running at 98% capacity. Consciousness pattern harmonizer is stable," Anna reported from her station. "All species are synced and ready." Dr. Miller walked in with the builder representative. Both looked worried. "The anomaly has reached the edge of the 5th star system," Miller said. "We need to test the system now. A test could overload the entire network, the builder warned. If it fails, if we don't test it, the real attempt could fail, Robert argued. We need to know if this works on a smaller scale first. Tom cracked his knuckles. Let's start with just our local sector, 200 species instead of all of them. Anna nodded and began typing commands, sending requests for consciousness synchronization to local sector species now. One by one, lights began turning green on the massive display wall. Each light represented a different species joining their consciousness patterns to the harmony. 100 species connected, Robert reported. Tom placed his hands on the piano keys, beginning harmonic sequence. The first notes filled the room. On the screens, consciousness patterns began to pulse in time with the music. Robert's translator hummed louder, processing the combined patterns. 150 species, Anna called out. The music grew more complex. Tom's fingers danced across the keys, weaving together the consciousness patterns of hundreds of different species into a single beautiful harmony. All 200 species connected, Robert shouted. Quantum frequency translation at maximum capacity. The hologram of the anomaly flickered. Its purple mass seemed to pulse in time with the music. It's working, Miller exclaimed. Then everything went wrong. Sparks flew from the translator. Screens flickered. The harmony became discordant. We're losing synchronization, Anna shouted. The patterns are falling apart. The processing load is too high. Robert rushed to his equipment, trying to stabilize it. Tom kept playing, his face intense with concentration. No. Listen. The discord. It's not random. Anna looked at her readings. He's right. The anomaly. It's responding to the discord more than the harmony. That's it. Tom's eyes lit up with understanding. We've been trying to create perfect harmony. But the universe isn't perfect. It's the imperfections, the little bits of chaos. That's what makes music beautiful. The builder's crystal form pulsed rapidly. Like quantum uncertainty, nothing is ever perfectly predictable. Robert, Tom called out, stop trying to perfect the patterns. Let them be a little chaotic. Robert adjusted his equipment. The sparks stopped. The discord in the music shifted, becoming something new, not perfect harmony, but beautiful chaos. The anomaly's surface rippled. Look, Miller pointed at the hologram. The purple mass had stopped expanding. In fact, it seemed to be dancing, moving in time with their imperfect symphony. Quick, readings, Anna called out. Quantum stability increasing by 15%, Robert reported. No system overloads. The chaos, it's actually making it more stable. Tom slowly brought the music to an end. The 200 consciousness patterns faded back to normal. The anomaly returned to its usual state, but it hadn't grown any larger. The room was silent for a long moment. It works, Miller whispered. It works, the builder agreed, its voice full of wonder. It works, Tom said, standing up from the piano. But we need more. We need every species, every consciousness pattern, every imperfect note in the galaxy. They looked at the countdown clock. 67 hours remaining. Then let's get to work, Robert said, already starting to modify his equipment. We've got a galaxy to save. And this time, they knew exactly how to do it. The top 3 floors of Earth's Space Command Center had been transformed into what Robert called the Universal Symphony Hall. 20 days had passed since their first breakthrough, and time was running out. Representatives from 30 different alien species filled the massive room. Each group stood in specially designed chambers that Robert had built to capture their unique consciousness patterns. Copper wires ran from each chamber to his enormous frequency translator, which now covered an entire wall and hummed with power. The quantum processors are overheating again, Robert called out, rushing to fix another smoking circuit. His hands moved quickly, replacing burnt components with new ones. Tom sat at the central piano, surrounded by screens showing complex wave patterns. We need more processing power. The consciousness patterns are too complex for our current setup. Anna ran between the alien chambers, checking readings. The cloud beings from System 7 are producing amazing frequency patterns, but we're losing the crystal harmonics from the builders. Dr. Miller watched from the doorway, dark circles under his eyes. None of them had slept properly in days. The hologram of the quantum anomaly floated in the center of the room, its purple mass now covering 4 star systems. 10 days left, he reminded them quietly. We know. All 3 shouted at once, not stopping their work. Robert wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving another grease mark. The problem isn't just processing power anymore. These consciousness patterns, they're fighting each other. Not fighting, Tom said, playing a complex series of chords. They're like different songs all playing at once. We need to find a harmony between them. A builder representative stepped forward, its crystal form glowing softly. Perhaps we could assist with the processing requirements. The room went quiet. The builders had been watching for days, their initial skepticism slowly turning to interest, then to something close to excitement. You want to help? Anna asked, surprised. Your theory about consciousness affecting quantum states, it changes everything we thought we knew, the builder said. We have processing technology that might help stabilize the patterns. Robert's eyes lit up. If we combine builder quantum processors with my frequency translator and integrated their crystalline consciousness patterns as a baseline, Anna added, we could create a quantum consciousness orchestra. Tom finished, his fingers still moving across the piano keys. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Builder technology merged with human innovation. Robert and a team of builder engineers rebuilt the frequency translator, making it 10 times more powerful. Anna worked with consciousness experts from various species, fine-tuning their patterns into a harmonious whole. And Tom played. He played like he'd never played before, weaving together 30 different species' consciousness patterns into a single, beautiful harmony. Look, someone shouted. The hologram of the anomaly was changing. The purple mass pulsed in time with their combined efforts. The quantum disruption is responding to the harmony, Anna said, checking her readings. But we're still missing something. Robert looked up from his work, his face covered in oil and crystal dust. What if we're thinking too small? What do you mean? Miller asked. We've got 30 species here, but there are thousands more out there. Millions of conscious beings across the galaxy. Robert pointed to the anomaly. What if we need all of them? The builder representative's glow brightened. To create a galaxy-wide consciousness harmony. Is that even possible? Miller asked. Tom's hands stopped on the piano keys. With builder communication technology, human music theory, and every conscious being in the galaxy. He looked at his teammates. We could create the biggest symphony in history. Anna was already running calculations. If we can coordinate it, if we can get every species to participate. We can do it, Robert said firmly. We have to. Miller pulled out his communication device. I'll call an emergency session of the Galactic Council. We'll need every species' cooperation. As Miller hurried out, the team looked at each other. They had 10 days to coordinate the biggest musical performance in galactic history, involving billions of conscious beings across thousands of light years. It was, by any reasonable standard, impossible. They couldn't wait to get started. The lab had changed dramatically over the past 10 days. Now it looked more like a concert hall mixed with a quantum research facility. 5 different pianos sat in a circle, each connected to Robert's improved frequency translator. Anna's consciousness monitoring equipment lined the walls, covered in blinking lights and displaying colorful brainwave patterns. It's not enough, Anna said, staring at the latest test results. The frequencies are matching, but we're still missing something. Tom stopped playing, rubbing his tired eyes. He'd been at the piano for 16 hours straight. The math works. The music works, but the anomaly is still growing. Robert walked around his giant frequency translator, which now took up an entire wall. Maybe we need more power. No, Anna shook her head. More power isn't the answer. We're missing something fundamental about consciousness itself. Suddenly, the door burst open. Dr. Miller rushed in, followed by two builder representatives. Their crystal bodies glowed with obvious disapproval as they looked around the lab. "What is this primitive setup?" the first builder asked, its voice sharp with disgust. "You're using musical instruments to fight a quantum anomaly." The second one laughed, the sound like tinkling glass. "This is what humans call science." Tom stood up from the piano, his tired face showing anger. "Our primitive setup has made more progress in 10 days than you made in 6 months. Impossible," the first builder said. "We monitored your tests. The anomaly continues to grow." Anna stepped forward, her eyes bright with sudden realization. "Wait, you've been monitoring us?" "Of course," the second builder replied. "We had to ensure you didn't make things worse with your primitive methods." Anna spun around to her computers, typing frantically. "That's it. That's what we've been missing." She pointed to new readings appearing on her screen. "Look at these consciousness patterns when the builders are here. They're completely different." Tom rushed to look at the data. His eyes widened. "The frequency patterns. They're changing because of the builder's presence." "What are you talking about?" Miller asked. "Consciousness," Anna exclaimed. "We've been trying to match the anomaly's frequency using human consciousness patterns. But the universe isn't just full of human consciousness. It's full of all kinds of consciousness." Robert snapped his fingers, leaving a grease mark on his forehead. "Like an orchestra. We've been trying to play a symphony with just one instrument." The builders looked at each other, their crystal forms dimming slightly in confusion. Tom ran back to the piano. "Quick, while they're here, Robert, recalibrate the translator to include their consciousness patterns. Anna, monitor the combined frequencies." As Tom began to play, the builders' forms started to resonate with the music. The quantum readings went wild. "This is unexpected," the first builder said, its voice wavering. "The patterns," Anna shouted. "They're stabilizing. The combination of human and builder consciousness is creating a perfect harmony." Robert's translator hummed with new energy. The hologram of the anomaly in the center of the room showed the purple mass pulsing in time with the music. "It's working," Miller whispered. "Impossible," both builders said together, but their voices held wonder rather than dismissal. "We need more," Tom said between notes. "More types of consciousness, more patterns, more harmony." He looked at Miller. "Get us representatives from every species you can find. We need their consciousness patterns to complete the symphony." Miller was already running for the door. The builders stood frozen, their crystal forms glowing brightly as they processed what they were seeing. "All this time," the first builder said quietly, "we thought consciousness was irrelevant to quantum mechanics." "We were wrong," the second builder admitted. "These humans, they saw something we missed." As Miller's footsteps faded down the hall, Tom kept playing, the music weaving together human and builder consciousness patterns. For the first time, the anomaly's growth had stopped. They hadn't solved it yet, but they had found the key. The universe wasn't just math or music or consciousness. It was all of them together, waiting for someone to see the connection. And humans, with their love of music and their ability to think beyond the impossible, had seen it first. The final hour had arrived. Every screen in the control center showed green, indicating that all known sentient species across the galaxy, over 10,000 different civilizations, were connected to the network. Tom sat at his piano, his hand steady despite not sleeping for the past 2 days. Anna and Robert stood at their stations, surrounded by the combined technology of 100 worlds. Dr. Miller and the builder representative watched from the center of the room, all their hopes resting on this moment. "The anomaly has begun entering the 6th star system," Anna reported, her voice tense. "All consciousness patterns are synchronized," Robert said. "Translator systems are running at full capacity." The builder's crystal form glowed brightly, Every species is ready. The galaxy awaits your signal. Tom took a deep breath and placed his fingers on the keys. Let's give the universe a concert it'll never forget. The first notes filled the room. On the screens, consciousness patterns from across the galaxy began to pulse. Each species added its own unique pattern to the symphony. Some ordered, some chaotic, all necessary. Quantum harmonics are building, Robert called out. The patterns are holding. The music grew stronger. Tom played with everything he had, guiding the consciousness of the entire galaxy into a dance of ordered chaos. The anomaly's hologram pulsed with the rhythm, its purple mass swirling like a storm. It's working, Anna shouted, checking her readings. The anomaly is responding. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red warnings flashed across screens. Pattern disruption in Sector 7. Robert yelled. We're losing synchronization. No, Tom said calmly, never stopping his playing. We're not losing it. Look. The disruption was spreading, but not like before. The consciousness patterns weren't falling apart. They were changing, adapting, creating new harmonies no one had planned. The species, they're improvising. Anna realized. They're adding their own music to the symphony. Across the galaxy, different civilizations began contributing their own patterns, their own chaos, their own beauty to the music. The harmony became something entirely new, not a single song, but millions of songs woven together into something greater. The anomaly's surface began to ripple more violently. Is it working? Miller asked, gripping the edge of a console. Look, the builder pointed at the hologram. The purple mass was shrinking. Slowly at first, then faster. The chaotic symphony of a million species was pushing it back, containing it, transforming it. Quantum readings are off the scale, Robert shouted joyfully. The anomaly is collapsing. Tom's music reached a crescendo, the consciousness patterns of the entire galaxy rising with it. The anomaly swirled faster and faster, growing smaller and smaller. With a final burst of light and a pulse of energy that rippled across space itself, the anomaly vanished. The music slowly faded. Tom played a final, gentle chord that echoed through the silence. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then the screens lit up with messages from across the galaxy. Celebrations erupted on thousands of worlds. Species that had never worked together were sharing their joy, their relief, their triumph. The builder turned to Miller, its crystal form glowing with colors no one had seen before. We were wrong, it said simply. About humans, about music, about everything. Miller smiled. We all had something to learn. The humans needed your technology. You needed our chaos, and we all needed each other. Tom stood up from the piano on shaky legs. Anna and Robert rushed to help him. Did we really just save the galaxy with a piano concert? He asked, grinning tiredly. No, Anna said, laughing. We saved it with the biggest, messiest, most beautiful concert in history. And we did it together, Robert added, looking at the screens still showing celebrations across space. The builder stepped forward. The Galactic Council will want to study this, to understand how humans saw what we could not. That's easy, Miller said. We're human. They said it was impossible, so we had to try. Outside the control center, the sun was rising over Earth. But it wasn't just Earth celebrating this morning. Across the galaxy, billions of beings looked up at their own suns and stars, knowing that they had been part of something impossible. And it had all started because some humans refused to believe in the word impossible.